So today we are in conversation with Meenakshi Srivastava, who's joining us from Delhi, India. Hi Meenakshi, how are you?
Very well, Sandeep. Very well. Thank you very much for having me over.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure having you for these conversations. And just a bit of a background on Meenakshi. Meenakshi is a transformational coach. She runs her own company and products, which are named Core Shifts. The company is a transformational coaching company. And Meenakshi has had over a decade of very strong experience in learning, development, and coaching while working with some of the leading organizations, I believe leading global organizations in India. And today her organization, Core Shifts, is doing fantastic work helping people understand their true potential, right, through various products that Meenakshi is offering. And one of the products that we are going to launch on the edVentr platform is related to emotional quotient or emotional intelligence, right? If I Google emotional intelligence, the first definition that comes, that opens up, which is from helpguide.org. It says emotional intelligence, otherwise known as emotional quotient or EQ, is the ability to understand, use, and manage your emotions in positive ways to relieve stress, which is a really big aspect, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenges, and diffuse conflict. Right? In today's day and age, we deal with a lot of complexity, right? And whether it is leadership, whether it is managing initiatives, or whether it's working at any level of an organization, I mean, now people have started giving a lot more emphasis on emotional intelligence or emotional quotient, right? It is like a division where people are trying to help understand themselves better and trying to manage situations or organizations better, right? And we've been hearing about the intelligence quotient. We've been hearing about multiple quotients. What, according to you, Meenakshi, is emotional quotient?
Great. So, thank you for setting such a strong base to this question, and for actually giving a very very basic definition of emotional intelligence, which just beautifully explains that it is primarily the ability to sense, to understand, to manage, and to influence your emotions and emotions of others. So, emotional intelligence primarily is part knowledge, part wisdom, part skill, part resilience. It's a combination of emotions of your own and others. So it's a very, very vast topic, but in very, very simple terms, it is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions, and recognize, understand, and manage emotions of others. Because it's very, very important to really understand here is that it is emotions that actually drive our thinking and our decisions and our behavior. So this is EI. It's considered to be twice more important than IQ, which is just a measure of a person's relative intelligence. So EI came into predominance primarily. It was a work of two researchers, Peter Salovey and John Mayer, way back probably, if I'm not mistaken, in the 60s or the 70s, probably 70s. But it was Dan Goleman in 1996 who actually brought EQ and EI, and he's the one who's actually responsible for bringing it to the common man and to the corporates and to organizations.
Very interesting. One of the leaders that I had worked with, and he always emphasized a lot on empathy. You may naturally be empathetic, but he always said that when you're in a managerial or a leadership position, empathy is the most important attribute that you can have. Right. And that is what nurtures an entire organization. You need to understand what your team or your department or the organization is feeling and look at situations from their perspective and understand their perspective, right? and that's at a very deep imprint in my life, especially from working in teams, managing teams, or leading teams. And empathy is important, right? Now when we talk about
Absolutely.
emotional quotient, that means it's a measurable uh,
Yes.
quotient. It's measurable, right?
And it's
But
not set in
how do
stone.
you
It's not set in stone. So it's
but
measurable.
how will I know that my empathy score is more than somebody else's empathy score, more or less, whatever? Or what are the aspects that I need to work upon? I mean, how would I know? How would that assessment happen? I mean, would it happen through a coach or an assessment? What will be the steps to understand?
Well, a good way to actually begin on this journey of creating that awareness for yourself, because there must be a need for it. There must be a need for it. So if you are ready to embark on this journey of understanding your level of emotional quotient and EI, and how is it impacting your relationships, your life, your ecosystem, a good way would be to, of course, take an assessment. There are various tools available, which are wonderful tools that can help you measure your emotional quotient and also create awareness. At CoreShips, we work with Harrison Assessments International that beautifully identifies 4 key skills to EI. So they've defined it so beautifully because it's such an EI as, I've often had people come to me and say, I mean, how do I measure emotion? I mean, it's so difficult to measure emotions, right? Because emotions can be, every thought is an emotion, isn't it? So most often people don't understand that it is a measurable competency. It is a measurable competency. You have tools, you have assessments, you have coaches, you have mentors who can work with you on emotional intelligence. So at Harrison Assessments, their entire EI competency framework revolves around the 4 key skills of EI. And those are measured. An individual is mapped against those. And what are your genuine strengths in terms of your emotions are identified, and what could be potentially those derailing emotions, which suck you into unproductivity, into blind spots, into not meeting your goals. Because EI has an important, it has a huge impact on your performance. And for that matter, for the purpose of our discussion, I had some key research points that I wanted to share with everybody, because most often, and I've experienced that as a coach, when you talk about emotional intelligence, especially at organizations, it's considered to be a very soft, squishy sort of it's a soft part of an organization. And it is actually, nothing about it is soft and squishy. Because it has and that's what the research says. And I'd like to share some points with our audience here, that 80% of competencies that differentiate top performers from others are in the domain of EI. Dan Goleman, his Harvard Business Review, talks about that EQ counts for twice as much as IQ and technical skills combined in determining whether you will be successful or not. 67% of the skills, attributes required to be successful are related to emotional intelligence. I don't think I need to say more.
No, definitely. I mean, this is indeed. I mean, these are very interesting insights. And I mean, if I go back to the definition, it says that it gives you the ability to resolve conflict. Right? When we work in an organization, right, we are working with different behaviors, right, and we may experience a lot of conflicts in different areas, whether you're at a managerial position or at a leadership position or at a junior position, right? Especially in larger organizations. In younger organizations, it's more of an open, flat culture, unless you've maintained it while you become large. But people do experience politics, and that's what I feel, that I mean, having this strong emotional quotient can really help you overcome a lot of the challenges which which may not be concrete challenges, but challenges because of people's behaviors, right? And if you're able to step up
Absolutely.
your game, from an emotional perspective, you're able to diffuse conflict. You are, I mean, I don't know whether it's diplomacy, whether it is, understanding people better, whether it's empathizing with people more and understanding them, at a level beyond the superficial level. But this can be a big solution, right? And how do you at course shifts help people understand, in terms of that this may be an issue and this is what needs a solution, and post that, I mean you're ready to hit fifth gear, once you have your emotions in place, right? I mean, this is something that people themselves are unable to control.
Absolutely. So, when people ask me what is our approach to developing EI at core shifts, I think uh, our approach is to actually work with the power and the acumen of your emotions to drive uh, high levels of self-actualization. So, and for which like I mentioned previously, we do psychometric testing with Harrison assessments, which gives us and clearly identifies the four skills to EI: self-awareness. How aware are you of your emotions? Social awareness, this conflict thing that you're talking about. How do I understand and handle conflict? Because the moment there are going to be two individuals interacting, there is scope for some sort of a dispute or conflict or disagreement. So how do I manage emotions of others? That's your social awareness. Then comes your relationship management, so the empathy part of it. So what happens via the assessment is that these four very strong competencies are laid out, measured, mapped to the individual. You get into a profile exploration with the coach, uh, and I do a lot of work with this product. We understand where is it, and the approach is scientific, right? Because most often we feel that we are aware of our emotions, but it's like that tip of that iceberg that you can see, which is visible, but the whole thing lies beneath, right? It's the iceberg model. So we go deep, we go deep and understand the causes of those behaviors out of those emotional impulses, which it's the assessment which is bringing those out. And we get into a sort of coaching conversation on what is it that the individual would like to develop in terms of their EI skill to impact that as a whole competency. So that's our overall approach. One takes the assessment, preferably, highly recommended, uh, goes through a in-depth profile exploration, uh, and creates that whole new awareness of that being. And it is from that point that everything starts to unfold, unveil, and the path becomes so clear. So that's the approach that we have at Core Shifts. It's we use potent data to analyze what's happening with the individual.
Interesting. I'm looking for, statistics on emotional intelligence. That with people who have a higher emotional quotient, how is their performance vis-a-vis people with a relatively lower emotional quotient? And I'm just looking at, this is emotional intelligence, some information on LinkedIn, that 90% of top performers score high on emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Just 20% of low performers score high on emotional intelligence. The more emotionally intelligent you are, the more likely you will be a top performer. Right? Given this statistic, it is extremely unlikely that anyone with a low EQ score will become a top performer. So as you mentioned, at the start of our conversation, that emotional quotient is a really important ingredient, for you to grow, for you to nurture teams or to operate at a larger scale. Especially, I mean, if your work, involves work, a lot of people, even developing products. Today, if you're developing a product, it's important to understand the emotional quotient of the customer that you're gonna, that you're gonna serve, right? So it's a very 360-degree, perspective, the emotional quotient. And having worked with a lot of people, what has been your personal experience that people who've gone through this coaching, or people who've gone through this assessment? I mean, have you seen a shift? Have you seen any improvement in their work style or behavior or progress?
So every coaching conversation creates a shift. Yeah. So, and it is not coach specific. I think the approach to blend in a bit of a scientific approach always becomes an edge, because one is able to cut the chase, yeah, get straight to the point. It is a very neutral platform to begin on for a coach as well. And yes, I've had some beautiful experiences. I mean, each coaching conversation from, if you really ask me as a coach, whether one is having a coaching conversation around leadership, or a personal, or even if it's a life coaching a session, or it's a development session or a performance driven session, the base of most of it is EI. So every time you have a coaching conversation, be it for whatever purpose, whichever competency that you are probably specifically addressing in the coaching conversation, what does shift is the EI. It is like that soil from where the roots start to pull out that energy and that nutrition to create that big tree, or that life of that being that you wish to be. So it is that soil. So every coaching conversation, whatever purpose, whatever objective, eventually finds its roots in EI. So that's how I look at it, because when it comes to behavioral coaching, EI plays a huge significance. It has a huge significance.
Definitely. I strongly believe that regulating your emotions, understanding your emotions, and managing your emotions can really help. It is human tendency. Let's say if there are 9 good things happening in my life, I have a good family. I have my family loves me every day, or whatever. I have a lot of positives. I'm healthy. I'm financially decent. But if there's one negative thing in life, that may be a difficult boss, for example, what happens is our mind constantly is focusing on that one challenging aspect, and we just disregard all the things that are working well. Right? Why am I saying this? Is because when I read this the definition of emotional quotient, it says that understanding your stress and relieving your stress, right? Which is a lot of people are not able to manage that. You may have you may subconsciously be feeling stress, and you're not even aware that you're feeling that stress, but it may be lingering somewhere at the back of your mind, that some issue or something that is not healthy, but it does exist. Right? Now, if I read this in the definition, I would understand that in some way or the other, working on your emotional intelligence can help you understand stress better and solve it. Right?
Absolutely.
And how does working on your emotional intelligence, let's say for you as a coach, when you're working with your coaches, how does it what is the journey like, understanding stress and trying to relieve that stress, and probably rise above it, that if it happens again, you don't feel that stress in a similar sort of a situation, or do you mature?
It's basically a journey of your own growth as well as a coach, because when you have such deep conversations with somebody regarding their emotions, it's very deep coaching. And in deep coaching, along with the coachee, the coach is experiencing a shift as well. So it's always a very, very enriching journey. it has to be done. It's like, we spent 12 years in India. We spent 12 years in school to develop our IQ, right? EQ is a continuum. It's like, and that's what I said earlier as well, that building EQ, building EI is primarily part wisdom, part patience, part observation. It's a journey. It's a journey. But one thing that really, really allows you to remain on track on that journey is self-awareness. Identifying and managing, to begin with, actually, identifying your own emotions, because your environment is you. And then yet again, Sandeep, I just can't help but bring in the concept of oneness of self and environment. I just am so tempted yet again. So that's how it is. That's how it is. So it's always an amazing journey to unfold for yourself. And it is a huge, if somebody was to ask me the top 5 benefits of EQ, the first and foremost benefit that comes to my mind is your ability to manage change. Because what is prevalent in today's day and age is VUCA. I'm yet again back to the VUCA concept. It's so volatile, it's so uncertain, it's so complex, it's so chaotic, it's so ambiguous. So most of us are most of the times rattled. Do I manage my emotions? How do I manage the emotion of my children who are right on my head because it's lockdown, or probably all the multiple emotions that all of us went through in the last couple of months since January 2020? It's been VUCA at its peak. So EI has played a very, very important role. I've had great observations of my own EI during this period. So, and it helped me cope. It helped me cope with the stress. It did. It did. It allowed me to be productive at a time where absolutely everything was collapsing probably around me from a business environment perspective. So the biggest benefit of EI is for an individual would be the ability to manage change. It's a key skill for leadership. It's a requirement for interpersonal relationships. You're a better manager, a better supervisor. So these are some natural byproducts of emotional intelligence.
Definitely. I mean, it's like emotional intelligence. I mean, from what I understand with this discussion, is like a heart for the body. And you very rightly said that in school we are taught tables of 10, 20, 30, 14, 15, addition, subtraction. I'm just taking examples from probably what my daughter is learning, but you're not taught how to manage crisis, and you're not taught how to manage uncertainty. You're not taught how to manage mental pressure, how to deal with people. It's expected that as a human you'll very naturally adapt to it. But seeing the rise in the number of anxiety issues, depression issues, relationship challenges, and all of that, I feel emotional intelligence is for everybody, regardless of whether you're working in an organization. As long as you're interacting with people and dealing with people, I think emotional intelligence is an aspect that everybody should develop, and we are glad that we are launching coaching product on emotional intelligence along with you, which will be backed with Harrison assessment. And yes, I mean, on behalf of edVentr, we look forward to introducing products soon. And yes, I'm sure people will really benefit from it. Excellent. So thank you once again, Meenakshi.
Thank you very much, Sandeep. Thank you.
Right?
Always,
and,
always.
We look forward to your product. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody.